A waiter humiliated an African-American man by spilling coffee on him and making a mocking comment, unaware that he was the restaurant's new owner. This marked the beginning of shocking changes that turned everyone's lives upside down. What happened next will leave even the most seasoned observer speechless. But let's start from the very beginning. The restaurant Bella Vita was bustling. It was Friday evening, and every table was occupied. Jean-Paul, a young waiter with ambitions of becoming a manager, darted between customers, doing his best not to show his irritation. His face remained polite, but in his mind, he was fuming. Too many people, too little gratitude. At that moment, the restaurant doors swung open, and a tall African-American man walked in. His suit was well-tailored, but slightly wrinkled, and his shoes didn't have the polished shine expected in a place like this. The man confidently took a seat by the window and motioned for Jean-Paul. "Good evening. Could I have a coffee, please?" he asked with a warm smile. Jean-Paul, already frazzled by the rush, smirked to himself. "Coffee? People will do anything to seem like they belong in places they can't afford." But outwardly, he replied, "Of course, sir. Coming right up." As he approached the counter, Jean-Paul exchanged a glance with a colleague, shaking his head. "Another one of those types who leave loose change as a tip, but act like they fit in here," he muttered under his breath. A few minutes later, Jean-Paul returned with a steaming cup of coffee. Approaching the table, he tripped over the uneven edge of the carpet, and the cup slipped from his hands. Scalding coffee spilled directly onto the customer's hands and shirt. "Damn it!" Jean-Paul cursed, grabbing at his tray. "I'm so sorry. That was an accident." The customer shot to his feet, shaking off the liquid, but instead of yelling or showing anger, he laughed. His loud laughter cut through the tense atmosphere of the restaurant. "Are you okay?" Jean-Paul asked, annoyed by the unexpected reaction. "What's so funny?" The man smiled. "It's fine. Mistakes happen, my friend. What matters is how you handle them." Feeling humiliated, Jean-Paul clenched his jaw and leaned in closer. "Maybe next time, skip the coffee if you're having trouble affording decent clothes." The man's eyebrows lifted, and his smile faded. Around them a hush fell over the restaurant. Jean-Paul's words echoed through the dining hall. The customers froze, the waitstaff exchanged uneasy glances, and the man calmly wiped his hands with a napkin, as if ignoring what had just been said. He looked at Jean-Paul. "An interesting approach to customer service," the man said, pausing deliberately. "Not every waiter dares to make such a comment." Jean-Paul flushed red and scrambled to explain himself. "Apologies, sir. I didn't mean to offend you." The man raised a hand, cutting him off. "It's all right. As you said, mistakes happen." The tension in the room eased as whispers among the customers resumed, and Jean-Paul quickly retreated to the counter. There, he was intercepted by Mark, the manager. "What did you just do?" Mark hissed. "Did you see how everyone was looking? You need to be more careful." "It was just an accident," Jean-Paul muttered, pouring another coffee. "The customer doesn't want anything. He's already forgotten about it." But in truth, Jean-Paul couldn't stop thinking about the incident. That strange smile on the man's face, it felt like more than mere politeness. A few minutes later, the man called Jean-Paul back to the table. "Your coffee, sir," Jean-Paul said, placing the cup in front of him, avoiding eye contact. "Thank you," the man replied. "What's your name?" "Jean-Paul, sir." "Jean-Paul?" The man repeated the name, as if tasting it. "Good. Now tell me, do you always treat customers this way?" "Excuse me?" Jean-Paul was taken aback, sensing the rising tension. "I'm asking, do you always judge people based on their appearance, or is today just not your day?" There was no anger in the man's voice, but it carried the weight of a judge delivering a verdict. Jean-Paul struggled to find a response, irritation bubbling under his skin. "I apologize if it seemed like I was judging you," he began. "But you understand, we're just so busy." "I'm sure you understand that being busy doesn't excuse disrespect toward the people who pay for your work," the man replied, his tone firm yet calm. With that, the man stood, leaving a generous tip on the table, and headed for the exit. But before he could leave, Mark intercepted him with the restaurant's feedback book in hand, a strained smile plastered on his face. "Please accept our apologies, sir. Perhaps you'd like to leave a few words about our restaurant?" The man took the pen and wrote something. Closing the book, he looked at Mark and added, "Tomorrow, you'll all learn more than you ever expected." With those words, he left, leaving Jean-Paul with a sinking feeling that trouble was just beginning. The next morning, Bella Vita was preparing for its usual busy day. Jean-Paul arrived earlier than usual, still mulling over the events of the previous evening. The strange customer and his parting words weighed heavily on his mind. Soon, Mark arrived, looking unusually nervous. "This morning, I got a message from the owner," he began, addressing the assembled staff. "We're welcoming the new owner of Bella Vita. He's decided to personally inspect the restaurant." Jean-Paul's face went pale. The news caught him off guard. He exchanged uneasy glances with his colleagues, but tried not to show his anxiety. "It's just a coincidence," he told himself. By noon, the restaurant doors swung open, and the man from the previous night walked in. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, and this time, his smile was cold and confident. Jean-Paul froze in place, his thoughts spiraling into chaos. "Good afternoon," the man said, his voice steady and commanding. "As you may have guessed, my name is Michael West, and I am your new owner." A murmur rippled through the room as the staff exchanged stunned glances. Mark hurried over to Michael, his smile forced and overly wide. "Welcome, Mr. West. We're all thrilled to have you here." Michael nodded curtly, his eyes scanning the staff. His gaze settled on Jean-Paul, and the tension in the room grew palpable. "It seems I've already had the chance to meet one of your waiters," Michael said, his piercing gaze fixed on Jean-Paul. I apologize for last night, sir," Jean-Paul stammered, feeling sweat trickle down his back. "It was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Michael stepped closer. "Or is it just how you normally treat customers who, in your opinion, don't fit in?" The silence in the room was almost tangible. Jean-Paul lowered his gaze, unable to find the words to respond. "I value honesty," Michael continued. "And as you noticed, I didn't yell or humiliate you in return. But last night's incident tells me something isn't right here. A restaurant isn't just a place to serve food. It's a place of respect. Today, we begin making changes." Mark attempted to interject, but Michael raised a hand to stop him. "We'll start with mandatory professional ethics training for all staff. That's non-negotiable. And you, Jean-Paul, will remain on my team only if you change your attitude." Everyone froze, waiting for Jean-Paul's response, but Michael had already turned and was walking toward the kitchen. His words echoed through the hall. "If I could forgive, then you can learn to do the same. But I won't tolerate this again." After Michael's unexpected visit, the Bella Vita restaurant became the center of sweeping changes. The next day marked the start of a professional ethics training program personally organized by Michael. Jean-Paul was the first to arrive, his mind racing with apologies and excuses. Yet he knew that the hardest part would be coming to terms with himself. The training was an eye-opener for the entire staff. Instead of dull lectures, Michael brought in an experienced coach who conducted role-playing exercises, forcing everyone to reflect on their behavior. For the first time, Jean-Paul saw himself from an outsider's perspective, a waiter who let his biases cloud his professionalism. His face burned with shame, but he gritted his teeth and committed to the process. At the end of the day, Michael gathered the staff in the dining hall and addressed them. "We are all human, and we all make mistakes. But a great restaurant isn't built on food alone. It's built on respect for each other and for our customers. Today marks a new chapter for Bella Vita, and I expect the same from you that I expect from myself, to learn from our mistakes." Jean-Paul stood up, summoning all his courage, and said loudly, "Sir, I want to apologize to you and to the entire team for letting my prejudices get the better of me yesterday. I'm ready to prove that I can be better." Michael nodded. "Accepted. But remember, apologies are just the beginning. Real change happens through actions. A restaurant transformed. In the weeks that followed, the restaurant underwent a remarkable transformation. The atmosphere grew warmer, and customers felt genuinely valued. Michael made it a point to spend time in the dining hall, greeting guests personally. He spoke with each employee, addressing their concerns and encouraging them to grow. Jean-Paul, in particular, underwent a radical change. His interactions with customers became genuine. He learned to be patient and open-minded. One day, a guest left him a note. "Thank you for your kind service. You make this restaurant special." Jean-Paul kept that note as a reminder of his new path. A taste of success. A month later, Bella Vita was awarded the city's Best Service Award. At the award ceremony, Michael invited the entire staff onto the stage, declaring, "This award isn't just for the food, it's for the way we treat one another. Success starts with respect." Standing beside Michael, Jean-Paul felt a deep sense of pride for the first time in a long while. Pride in himself and in his team. Bella Vita had truly become a place that celebrated not just taste, but people.